Hallelujah, hallelujah. Good evening, good night, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome back to the channel Voice in the Wilderness. we have been having a lot of fun, a lot of joy, studying, reading, and bringing forth this word. That Jehovah has inspired so many to write. And I just want to remind us that even though we are talking about law, even though we are talking about the rules and statutes and principles and laws, the Torah, the Tanakh, however you want to call it, even though we are talking about that, I want you to remember we are talking about those things in light of today's era, of today's mentality, of today's prophetic things. Okay? We are living in very, very prophetic times. What do I mean by that? I mean, if we read the scripture, if we read Paul's letters, if we read the testimony of Yeshua according to the Gospels in Matthew 24 and so on, and Matthew 7 and all over, really, you would understand, right? He talk about continuously about this deceitfulness of riches, deceitfulness of words, deceitfulness of men, right? And this is where we began, as a matter of fact, to talk about this topic, prophecy, CY, which is teaching, prophecy, SY, which is a forth-telling, not fortune telling, but a forth-telling, in this modern era, in today's world. If you're alive and you believe in God, then you probably understand what I'm saying. We started this topic in Matthew 24, where Yeshua said, as in the days of Noah, so shall it be when I'm coming again. And we went back, because you have to, if he says it will be as in the days of Noah, you have to go back and look at what they were doing in the days of Noah. You have to go back and read the narrative. What was the narrative? What was written about the days of Noah? And we read important things. Man was doing whatever they wanted to do, right? And men who were noted to be, who were called sons of Elohim. Well, the sons of Elohim, we looked at that in depth, which doesn't necessarily mean the sons of God. See, most Elohim is the word for God, but Elohim is also translated angels and mighty men and all these other things. So we have to look at it in context. Sons of God, sons of men, and the daughters of men could be the same thing. Sons of men, mighty men, sons of, and we talked about that, right? Giants. And we talked about the fact that people say, oh, they were giants in the land, 50-foot men, big men, big fallen angels. But when you read it in context, when you listen to what Yeshua says in Matthew 24, and you go back and you read everything in context, this could have a completely different meaning. And I'm saying that meaning is very pertinent to today. We identified who these mighty men could be outside of the angels. See, most people think mighty men were angels. No, mighty men, billionaires, millionaires, kings, presidents, leaders in communities, leaders in churches, okay? Leaders all over the world, in every facet of the word, leader. Right? If you have money and you're doing stuff in the world, Amazon and Facebook and all those guys who sit on top of these entities and see themselves in positions where they could create rules, change principles and laws, okay? And have people now begin to follow those rules and laws and principles. That's what we're talking about. These men, it is said, according to the Genesis narrative, Genesis chapter 6, they were doing a lot of stuff. They were taking wives, right? They were having relations with, we have no idea. But if we look at what's going on today, if we think about what's going on today, the human trafficking, the sex trafficking of women and men, girls and little girls and boys, right? You hear about all kinds of stuff. Who are the men behind these things? Who are the men perpetrating these things? And you might wave these things off and say, well, that's not true. But guess what? Yeshua didn't wave it off. Okay? The written narrative didn't wave it off. So we have to begin to open our minds to the significance of what Yeshua said. Right? He said, no, let no man deceive you. Alluding to the deception of men. Men are deceiving people. They can deceive you. They can lie. Mighty men, millionaires and billionaires and kings and priests and famous people, Hollywood and basketball and football and soccer and wherever they are. It's, you think about it. And if people don't submit, they don't recognize, they don't perceive that the laws, the rules, the statutes of God that He set into motion from the beginning, if they don't hold those things high, then we will fall to anything. What's the old adage? The old saying? If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Right? So, we've been talking about that for hours. Meaning, every teaching, whether it's 1 hour and a half, 2 hours, over a period of time, it's been hours. We've been talking about that. The perception that these mighty men, these millionaires, these icons that we call them, these people that we follow, the musicians, music that we listen to, people that we idolize, people that we hold in high esteem, say stuff and do things. If those people don't hold up the word of God, the wisdom of God, the voice of God, the commandments of God, what are they holding up? Their own wisdom, their own voice, or the voices of those who they look up to? So we have to beware of the deceitfulness of men, the deceitfulness of riches, if you will. We talk about Daniel. What happened in Daniel? What happened? The children of Israel were rebelling. They were rebellious, hard-hearted. Jehovah stirred up Nebuchadnezzar from the Chaldeans. He rose up, took his army into the city, into Israel, besieged the city, took the people captive, and took them back to his land, his country. And what happened? Nebuchadnezzar called to the chief of the eunuchs, the chief of the sorcerers and the witchcraft people and the warlocks and the psychics and the Obia people and the voodoo people. I'm talking to all you island people out there too. Called them, the head of them, and said, I need you to go into the Jewish community that we brought over and find young, listen, young men, young people, without blemish. He didn't want no one-footed people, no one-toed people, one-eyed, one-eared, no, none of that. He want good-looking, handsome, beautiful, debonair, people with swag. You see what I'm saying? People who got fire on them. You know, talking about young people who that's fire. Yeah. People who got a little swag. Bring them. Who got a little sense. Right? Who got a little charm, a little charisma. Who could talk a talk. Bring them. And we're going to put them under training, a tutelage, if you will. And we're going to teach them how we do things. It's a big statement. And we start off this process by bringing them to the king's table, giving them the king's dainties. Feeding them good from the king's table. Kings don't eat small stuff, okay? Kings eat good, hearty. I ain't know about healthy, but good and hearty. Maybe today the kings might be eating a little more healthy. But back in the day, I don't know. I wasn't there. But he's a king. And kings eat good. They always have food. They ain't never hungry. Okay, unless they're fasting. Yeah, that's how we take care of them. Give them our stuff. And teach them our ways. How we interpret things. How we perceive things. How we see things. How we talk about things. And we went through that. All of those things were to itemize the truth that people in authority, people in leadership, mighty men, kings and priests and presidents and leaders and senators and congress people. Yeah, and we go into politics, all the political people, musicians, basketball players. Think about all that money they're making. Think about a young guy, 19, 20 years old, coming out of college or going into college or in college. And coming out, top basketball player, football player, soccer player, whatever player. Given millions of dollars. Think about somebody who could sing real good. Walk into Jay-Z or whoever big office music people. P. Diddy and all of them. No, you real good, you top class. We're going to give you money. We hear the stories about how people get suitcase full of money to join different music agencies and groups and records, labels and all kinds of stuff. We hear about that. We hear stories of people in these different places who just go buck wild because they got some money in their pocket. They go buck wild. The money answers everything. If you're looking for money, I hope if you get some money, it answers the good things that you're thinking about, not them wickedness. We talk about all of those things. We're still talking about holding high the Torah of Jehovah, the Torah of God. But we hold it high because we understand that all these things that we talk about, the king's dainties, all these priests and false prophets, and hopefully we get into Deuteronomy chapter 13 today, and we're going to read about these people who come and talk all this big talk. Don't be afraid of them. Okay? We're still talking about holding high the rule of God, the principle of God, the law of God, the Torah of God, the statutes of God, the commandments of God, and the voice of God against everything else. I think it's in Ephesians, the apostle wrote, take every thought captive and bring it, put it under subjection to the word of God. Every thought. Somebody say something? How does God see that? How does God see that? Father, what do you say? Bring it under the light. Shine the light of the word of God over it. To see if it's worth something. See if what you say you're following, maybe perhaps you are being deceived. And we talked about that at length for hours on end. Last week, the last session, we talked about, we went into the book of Galatians. And I think we ended in this very verse where I'm going to begin. So this week, we're going into the book of Galatians. We're going back there. We're going to read a verse. And we're going to dig into this verse, right? What is this? Galatians chapter 3. And if you listen to me for the first time, if you're hearing this for the first time, go back and listen to the previous tape and the tape before that and before that, the recording before that. Okay, listen to who is Israel, what we're going to do about forever. Because there's a lot of things in this narrative from Genesis to Revelation that's forever. What does forever mean to you? When you hear the word forever, what do you perceive? What do you think about? How do you see that word? Does it have an end? Because as far as I understand, in the plain meaning of the word, forever is that's what it exactly means. Forever. Everlasting, eternal, never ends. Hopefully in Galatians chapter 3, we're going down to we're going to start at verse 12. We talked about verse 12 last week. I don't want to go back, talk about verse 12. I really want to get to the next verse, but I want to start at verse 12. Verse 12, in Galatians 3, the Apostle Paul writes, the law is not of faith, but the man who does them will live in them or by them or through them or for them. And we talk about that word live. It's not a word that we just, that's how you ought to live. No. That's where life is. Life is in doing these words, is in being obedient to the word. That's how Yeshua was able to be resurrected, because he was perfectly obedient. Ergo, good segue into the next verse. We talk about verse 12 last tape. Go back, and I'm going to repeat myself. In Galatians 3 and 13, Paul makes a remarkable statement here, however. He says, Messiah redeemed us from the curse of the law. Didn't redeem us from the law. Yeshua did not redeem us from the law. He didn't redeem us from the instructions. Messiah redeemed us from the curse of the instructions. From the curse of the instructions. We talked about that. We're going to dig into that some more. He having become a curse for us, because it is written, cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree. That verse, that line in the letter of Paul's writing to the Galatians is a tremendous statement. Messiah redeemed us from the curse of the law. Well, what is the curse of the law? We talked about that. The curse of the law is disobedience to the law. When you disobey the instruction, what happens is you fall under a curse. Okay? So if you obey the instructions, you fall under a blessing. You will be blessed because of your obedience. Yeshua was blessed because of his obedience. Well, how was he blessed? He was resurrected from the dead. And his blessing has now been imputed upon us if we do the same. He was perfectly obedient. We've talked about that. Philippians 2:5 says, "Let this mind be in you, which was also in Yeshua Messiah, who didn't think it worth anything to be considered equal with God," I'm paraphrasing. And so, took on the form, emptied himself. We talk about what happens when something becomes empty. Something else replaces it. Right? Okay? Something else replaces it. So he shed his glory and took on a servant in the likeness of a male, a human being. He was male and a human being. And then further humbled himself to what? What did he humble himself to? To the instructions of his Father. And he became obedient to the instructions of his Father, even unto death. Even the death of the cross. Even the death of the tree. Right? That's what Paul also writes in his letter to the Philippians. He's not writing scripture. He's writing a letter. He is explaining something to the Philippian church. And the leaders in the Philippian church were given instructions. I write this letter to you, but I also want you to read it out aloud to the parishioners, to the people, to the congregation, to the assembly. So the letters were not given to them personally. The letters were sent to the leaders for the leaders to read it and then go and read it in front of the congregation so that everybody will have that same knowledge. Everybody will have that same knowledge. So Paul here says, Messiah redeemed us from the curse of the law. So let's deal with that first. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 11. I've quoted that chapter already. Okay? Deuteronomy 11. And we're just going to read some verses. We're going to go down, okay? We're going to go down to verse 26, but I want to read a few verses prior to that, just to give you an idea of what it says. The very first verse in Deuteronomy 11 says, this is Moses speaking to the children of Israel. Therefore you shall love Jehovah your Elohim and keep his instructions, his statutes, his ordinances, and his commandments. Instructions, statutes, ordinances, and commandments. 4 things. Are there 4 different things? No, not necessarily. They all mean the same thing. And I could parenthetically throw in there the voice of God. He says, therefore you shall love Jehovah your Elohim and keep his instructions, uphold his instructions, do his instructions. In other places, in many other places, it talks about keeping and doing. That's what keeping is. In the garden, he says, he put him in the garden to cultivate and keep. How do you cultivate and keep? You don't just sit and watch the garden. Okay. See some weeds growing over there, okay? Weed, get thee behind me. No, God's told the earth to bring forth seed and produce stuff. So that's what the earth is doing. You can't just look at the earth now and say, tell the weed to get thee behind me. No, you ought to go pick the weed. You ought to go clean. You ought to go, weed it up. That's what you want to do. That's what you will cultivate and keep. You serve in the garden. Remember, we came across that word. In the word cultivate is the word serve. So Moses is saying, you shall love Jehovah your Elohim, keep his instructions, his statutes, his ordinances, and his commandments. When? Until Yeshua comes. Don't worry, God is sending your Messiah, and your Messiah is going to come, and he's going to erase all of that. Moses didn't say that. He says, always. Therefore, you shall love Jehovah your Elohim, keep his instructions, statutes, ordinances, and his commandments. Always. Leave that right there. Let's go down to verse 7. But your eyes have seen all of Jehovah's great work which he did. Right? He brought them out of Israel. Man, he let them raid out of Egypt. He brought them out of Egypt. He tell them, go ask the Egyptians for gold and silver. They pillaged all the Egyptians. They came out of Egypt with wealth, with stuff, okay? The Egyptians chased them, and God was with them. Pillar, a cloud by day, and a pillar of fire by night. They got stuck at a river. Moses parted the Red Sea. God parted the Red Sea. They went through the river, drowned the Egyptians. That's what Moses is reminding them. Hey, remember all these things that you all saw with your own two eyes? You all were there. These things are important to keep in the back of your mind. Not in the back of your mind, in the front of your mind. These things are important to know, to perceive, to understand that this is who is watching over you. Somebody who could do stuff like that. You know, pipsqueak, little snail running around. No, we're talking about great, huge, tremendous, awesome God. There is none like him. Mikamoka. And beside him, there is none. En-od, none, no, zip, zulch, bzz, that's it. It's him, that's it. Nothing is nothing. He is it. He's everything. That's who we're serving. He said, your eyes have seen all Jehovah's great work which he did. And he goes back and reiterates or reiterates, or however you say. He re-said, re-spoke, rehashed the thing that we just read in Deuteronomy 11 and 1. He said, therefore you shall keep the entire commandment. Now he getting back wild himself. He's saying not just the commandment, the entire commandment, which I command you today, that you may be strong and go in and possess the land that you go over to possess. So when you stand for the instructions of Jehovah, when you uphold his instructions, his Torah, his commandments, his precept, his statutes, his voice, his ordinances, when you do that, you are considered strong. Daniel said, those who know their God will be strong and do exploits. Because they will uphold his Torah, they will uphold his law, they will lift him up. Not only that you're going to be strong, not only that upholding those laws are going to enable you to go in and possess the land. Verse 9, but that you may prolong your days in the land which Jehovah swore to your fathers to give to them and to their offspring, which you are, by the way, a land flowing with milk and honey. For the land where you go in to possess is not like the land of Egypt that you came out of. So he's bringing you into a land. He's taking you out of a dry, barren land. A land that they had strife and struggle and hardship in. Where you sowed your seed and watered it with your foot, he writes, as a garden of herbs. But the land you go over to possess is a land of hills and valleys, with which drinks water from the rain of the sky. Oh my goodness. That is awesome. It's a land of hills and valleys. And those hills and valleys drink water, not from the ground. No, they drink water from the rain of the sky. I mean, the rain falls from the sky straight on these lands and hills and valleys. They don't fall down the ground and then go. God, it's so beautiful. A land which Jehovah your Elohim cares for. Jehovah your Elohim eyes are always on it, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. Verse 13. It shall happen if you listen diligently to my commandments, which I command you today, to love Jehovah your Elohim, to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. Three times in 13 verses. 3 times. You could say beginning, middle, and right there now, you get Moses saying the same thing. When he talks here about loving Jehovah, how do you love somebody? You do things for that person. Not to hurt them, but you do things to be a blessing to that person. How will you bless God? You obey his instructions. That's how you bless him. You just say, I bless you, Lord. You could say that, but that's not how you bless him. You bless him by doing his instructions, by being obedient. Like Yeshua, who received the blessing for his obedience. In verse 16, he throws out a warning that is thrown out by Yeshua in Matthew 24. Be careful, lest your heart be deceived by the foolishness that's going on around you. And you following things that God is saying, do you even know what you follow? Do you even understand what you're saying? People say stuff, they don't. Do you even understand what you just said? Did you even hear your own voice saying this thing that you just said? Be careful, lest your heart be deceived. And what happens when you're deceived in your heart? What happens when you're deceived? You turn away from the one true Elohim, the one true God, and you begin to serve other gods and worship them. How you begin to serve other gods and worship them? You begin to do the things that the other gods want you to do. You begin to jump in the bandwagon and wave the rainbow flag. You begin to say stuff like, well, I'm not a male, I'm four-gendered. You begin to jump into all of these kinds of anti-God things, God, upholding God's law things. That's what you begin to do. You begin to listen to it. You begin to propagate it. You begin to support it. You begin to, your children go. Your children is like, I'm joining that. Guess what? Yeah. Because your children join it, you join it too. Because your children join it, you condone it. Be careful lest your heart be deceived and turn away to serve other gods and worship them. We're still talking about what is the curse of the law. The law is not a curse. But Moses is saying, be careful lest your heart be deceived and you turn away from obeying the instructions, the laws, the commandments, the ordinances, the voice, the statutes of God, and you go serve other gods. And what happens? What happens then? Verse 17. And Jehovah's anger be kindled against you, and he shuts up the sky so that there is no rain. What? What is that? It's a curse. If you're living in this time of the writing, you probably, all you could do is farm and grow crops. Right? Maybe, perhaps. But this was a big deal then. Planting crops without water. It's like you going in the desert without water. You just might die. Crops just might die. So, of course, that's a curse. You plant crops and God hold back the rain. Why is he holding back the rain? Because you're disobedient. You're disobedient, so you incur his wrath. He holds back the rain. What do you do when you tell your child, your daughter, your son, your dog? Because some people think the dog is the children. Okay. What do you do to your dog if you tell the dog sit and they don't want to sit? You have to chasten the dog in whatever measure you do. I'm not propagating violence against the animals. I'm saying you go and you hold the dog and I say sit and you be stern. That's chastisement. And because you want to make sure the dog understands that you mean sit. If you say sit, you mean sit. So you want the dog, you want that message. You want that connection to be made in the dog's brain. Listen here, Toby. I tell you sit and I want you to stay. Don't move. And you are firm, and the dog catches on to that and understands that. And when he obeys, then you pat him and say, good dog. And even give him a treat. It's no different. Verse 18. Let's read verse 17 a little bit more. So he shut up the sky so that there is no rain. And when there is no rain, the land does not yield its fruit. The wheat doesn't grow, the barley doesn't grow, the corn don't grow, the spinach don't grow, whatever you're planting doesn't grow. the seeds die. And you perish quickly from off the good land which the Lord gives you. So the land is good. There's nothing wrong with the land. It's you the problem. I'm the problem because I'm not obedient. Nothing wrong with the wind. Nothing wrong with the rain. All those things God called good. Even I called good. But when I do wrong, no, I become a lawbreaker. I become a sinful person. Verse 18. Therefore you shall lay up these words of mine in your heart and in your soul. Why? Why is he saying that? Because the intention that God has, the intention of Jehovah, is to write his Torah, his instructions, his laws on the tables of your heart. His intent is to put it there. His intent is for you to have it there. Why? So that you wouldn't sin against him. You shall bind them for a sign on your hand, and there shall be for frontlets between your eyes. And you have people who do these things. They literally tie strings and tie things on their fingers because of that, right? And you see the Jewish people in Israel and other places who put these little things on their forehead and tie. That's why they do it. That's not what it means for you to literally do it. And they think when they literally do it that they will remember. Well, that's not what Moses is saying. Because the heart is not outside, the heart is inside. So tying that, the other tie it inside. Tying this, the other tie it inside. You can't tie it inside. But they tie it outside, so perhaps they look at it, they feel it, and they remember his instructions. Is it wrong to do it? No. It's not wrong. But that's not the point. It's not for you to do that. It's an analogy. It's a concept for you to understand, for you to perceive. If you perceive the concept and you hold the concept there, if you uphold it, because God wants to write it on your heart. He wants to write it inside of you, in your brain. "19, you shall teach them to your children." And we go to another level of importance. You have to teach what God is teaching you to your children. So hopefully they could grow up and and learn to walk righteously too. Yes, you are walking righteously when you obey the instructions. You have to understand that in your obedience to the instructions, that you are on the right track. Obeying them themselves doesn't make you righteous, right? Because guess what? Everybody, we've talked about that last week, from Genesis 3, all mankind was subjected to the law. "Thou shalt not eat of the fruit of the tree that's in the midst of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, because in the day you eat of it, you shall surely die." And she ate and brought death unto herself, unto her husband, and to every human being thereafter. So we were all subjected to death thereafter. So the law, as we engage, as we obey, right? That in obedience doesn't necessarily makes us righteous. But God is the one who calls us righteous because of our obedience. Just like Yeshua. Yeshua was perfectly obedient. In other words, he wasn't like me. Because I obey and then something happened and I disobey. And then I start to obey again and then something happened and I disobey. Yeah, that happens to me and you and everybody else. But Yeshua, it never happened to him. He was perfectly obedient. Perfectly obedient. He got 100. He got an A+ in obedience. And that's why God says, "Pop, I'm going to resurrect you." Boom. And when we adopt that same principle, when we adopt that same philosophy, when we adopt that same perception, he was perfectly obedient. I'm going to try to be perfectly obedient. If I fall, if I slip, guess what? I have an advocate with the Father, right? I can go boldly to the throne and obtain what? Mercy, obtain grace in a time of need. Yes. Not because you was obedient all the time, but because you understand that when you obey, that puts you in a place to receive grace. When you disobey, you only get in a place to receive grace when you turn. So if you keep disobeying, you keep going south, grace is still there. Grace don't move. Grace ain't move. He's still there. You gotta turn. You, sir, you, ma'am, have gotta turn and be like, oh, wait a minute. I've been doing this thing wrong all the time. I've been disobedient. You know what? Let me turn back. Let me begin to obey. And grace perhaps will say, you know what? Because many people disobeyed and ain't find no grace. Ask Saul, King Saul. God took his spirit from him. Listen, you can't do nothing without the Spirit of God. You can't be alive or live like like the word depicts. Live, who be vibrant and alive and be joyful and friendly and loving and kind. That's life. When you're wicked and evil and bad and mad and angry, that's not life. That's not life at all. Teach them to your children, he says. Talking about them, when you sit, talking about them, not talking about your children, talking about the commandments, the laws, the statutes, the ordinances, the voice, the principles, the rules. Talk about them with your children. When you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. What did he tell Joshua? Meditate on these words day and night. What did the psalmist David say? Your words, O Lord, I've hidden in my heart. Your Torah, O Lord, I've hidden in my heart. Your commandments, O Lord, I've hidden in my heart. Your voice, O Lord, I've hidden in my heart, that I will not sin against you. Teach them to your children. Talk about them when you sit down, dinner time, breakfast time, lunch time, whenever the kids are around and you're sitting down and have these conversations. When you walk in, you're going out in the park with them. You know, my kids, you'll be like, God, Dad, that's all you talk about? No. That's not all I talk about. I talk about all kinds of different things. But you're not always around me all the time. But everything I talk about, he's in there somewhere along the line. He's in there. Got to have him in there. Because I'm telling you, without him, there's no living. Got to have him in. Got to have him in. Got to be talking about him. Verse 20, you shall write them on the doorpost. That's where we get that little Methuselah, not Methuselah. You know, the little thing, the little commandments that and they put it on the doorpost. That I don't think it's Methuselah. I'm thinking about the name. Write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. What is he saying? I mean, you can if you if you think you want to do it and write them all over. Yeah, write them all over. Okay. Like the Transformers. You remember the guy Transformers? He was writing the stuff all over the wall in the college and stuff. You want to write them all over if you think that will help you. Does he mean for you to literally do it? Probably not. But there's what he's saying is, hold it so dear to you, hold it so close to you, hold it so near to you that you will remember it. It's a constant thing before your eyes. Verse 22. For if you diligently keep all these commandments, which I command you to do them. You see, I said that before. Some places say keep, some places say keep and do. Some places just say do. But they're all talking about the same thing, people. We get caught up with words. And we say, oh, he ain't use that word there, so he ain't mean that. He mean this, just do. He ain't mean keep. No, keep, do is all part of the same thing. They all work synonyms. They're all synonyms. To do them, to love Jehovah your Elohim, to walk in all his ways, and to cling. What does it mean to walk in his ways? What does that mean? It means to live your life as he wants you to live your life. In his statutes, in his laws, in his principles, according to his voice. That's what he means. And to cling to him. What does he mean? To cling. God is not a physical person. You can't cling to him. But you cling to him when you lift up his words, when you keep his words, when you do his words. All of those things, that's what it entails. It means, that's what it means. And what happens when you click with all these things, according to verse 22, what happens? Then Jehovah will drive out all these nations from before you. You shall dispossess nations greater and mightier than yourself. Every place on which the sole of your foot tread shall be yours. From the wilderness of Lebanon from the river Euphrates, even to the western sea, shall be your border. No man shall be able to stand before you. Jehovah your Elohim will lay the fear of you and the dread of you on all the land that you tread on, just as he said to you. So here Moses is laying that we're still talking about what is the curse of the law. It's significant. We must know what it is. And it's simple. It's disobedience to Jehovah's laws, statutes, commandments, voice, precepts, concepts, whatever, however you think it is. It's a rule. It's a rule that you must obey, you must adhere to, you must do. Find a way to do it. Uphold the Sabbath, keep it. Even if you stay home and just watch TV, keep it. You will learn, you will begin to. The Sabbath is awesome. I'm telling you, it is phenomenal. Listen, you won't begin to learn to live until you start to keep the Sabbath. If you just keep it one time, oh man. And you begin to feel the peace and the essence. And you begin to know that God is he's there. All he wants you to do is to just keep it. Just rest. Just chill. Just don't do no work. Just chill out. stop thinking so hard about what is work and what's not work, and just do it, and you will begin to see, and then you will begin to flow and begin to understand, and you begin to perceive, and all of that, and all of them other things that people fight up. Right, you shouldn't do this, and you can't do that, and you ought to tear the toilet paper the day before, and all that stuff. It wouldn't even matter to you, because you know what? It doesn't matter. He just wants you to just take a moment in time, and okay, Father, you say if I do this, is something in this for me. Let me try it. Let me try it. Once, twice. And listen, man, you don't know, you're really playing with God. You don't know who He is for real. No man, He says, will be able to stand before you. For Jehovah your Elohim will lay the fear of you and the dread of you on all the peoples in the land that you tread on. You will be fearless, and people will be fearful. And here is where we come to the crux of the matter. What is the curse of the law? Here it is, right here. Behold, He says, look, pay attention, listen. Shema is the word for hear, O Israel. Hear. Listen to me. I'm going to say something. I need you to pay attention. Look to me. Thinking about Jerry Seinfeld. Look to the cookie. Look to the black and white cookie. If you know what I'm talking about, it's okay. It's something I just thought about. It's funny too. He says, behold, I set before you today a blessing and a curse. And we talked about this. Is this two different things He's setting? No. He's setting one thing. One thing. The Torah, the instructions, the law, the statutes, the commandments, the voice. That's what he's laying before them. It's a blessing, and it could be very well a curse. But everything is dependent on you and what you perceive it to be. And what not just perceive it to be, but your understanding in how you do. Is it null and void to you? Do you think you don't have to do it? Well, guess what? If you don't have to do it, you wouldn't keep it, right? You wouldn't uphold it. Guess what? You wouldn't be blessed. Simple. Because He says, it's a blessing if you listen. And listening is not just hearing. Your mother says to you, boy, I want you to go clean your room. And you never do. And then she come back 5 hours later and say, boy, didn't you hear me say clean your room? Yeah, Mom, I heard you. Well, why didn't you clean it? You heard, but you didn't do. So you didn't listen. So now, she had to punish you. Or she had to threaten you or something. Because she wants you to clean your room. It's so simple. It's a blessing if you listen, if you obey, if you hear and obey. That's what listening is, hearing and obeying. If you listen to the commandments of Jehovah your Elohim, which I command you today. If you hear and obey them, if you do them diligently, if you diligently keep and do, there's a blessing in there. And then he says, phenomenally, verse 28, what's the curse of the law? And a curse, or the curse, if you do not listen. if you do not obey, if you do not follow, if you do not listen and do, that's the curse. That's why Yeshua had to be perfectly obedient. That's why he told the other side 3 times that we did in Matthew 4, I think it was. 1 time he told him, 2 times he told him, 3 times he told him, I'm not interested in nothing you say, even if what you say is written. If God is not telling me that right now to do it, what you saying, I'm not hearing you. Move away. You have to serve your Jehovah, your God, too, just like I have to do. That's what I am doing. Guess what the woman didn't do? She didn't listen. She didn't hear and obey. She told the serpent, God said I shouldn't eat it. I shouldn't even touch it. Okay, it's not a big deal if she said that, people. Stop making a theological issue out of that. That's not an issue. You know what the issue is? She said it. She said it to the extent that she said it. And then immediately following it, she went and she still did it. She still did what she wasn't supposed to do. What she said she wasn't supposed to do. She still went and she did it. That's the issue. And we could contemplate on how she did it. We could do that from now until God comes back. And we don't know if we right or wrong. We don't know. God told her not to touch, not to eat. The serpent said, if you eat, this and that will happen. She told the serpent. God said, we can't eat, we shouldn't even touch it. Well, you have to touch to eat anyway. Sight and hearing and taste, all of this, they're connected. Right? Even the dog, when the dog eats and the dog don't use his paws, but the mouth, the lip had to touch the food, his tongue had to touch the food to pull it up. So he's still touching it. So she's not saying something, wow, this is like a big issue here. She should never have said that. If she only said, well, if God told us not to eat of it. If she didn't add that extra little bit, that wouldn't have caused her a sin. But that's not the point. If you think that caused her a sin, then run with it. It's okay. I ain't mad at you. I'm just saying that doesn't make a difference. She heard, but she didn't listen. She didn't listen because she didn't hear and do what she was told to do. Yeshua came and he did. He heard and he did. Did it to the point where he was crucified for it. For being that obedient. We will kill you. You too perfect. You too obedient. That is the curse of the law. Disobedience. So Galatians says he died to redeem us from the curse of the law. He died to redeem us from disobedience. He was perfectly obedient. He set the preeminent example of obedience. That's the benchmark for obedience. That's the benchmark. Him, that man, Yeshua. That's why God highly appointed him and gave him a name above every name. That's why God resurrected him from the dead and all that good stuff. Because in his perfect obedience, he received a blessing that he can now pass down in perfection. God is perfect. And he is the perfect one to give you something, to give me something. And it's in us following that benchmark and striving to hit that mark, if you will, striving to attain that benchmark. That's how we achieve, that's how we arrive at perfection. Remember, he said, be ye perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. Perfection does not mean like the perfection in that sense. He was talking about mature to the point where you understand that you have to be like this. But being like that in itself is not going to make you, it's not going to give you the, you're still a human being living in this earth, right? You're still a human being living in this earth among death, because everything was subject to death because of what the woman did in the garden. And if you're living, if you're alive in the earth, that death is, your body is still subject to it. But if you're mature in focus and perspective and perceptiveness of what you must do, that maturity is what drives you. He says, be ye perfect, be ye mature. It drives you to understand things. Paul said, when I was a child, I thought as a child. But when I became a man, when I became mature, I began to understand differently, because your perception has to change, right? A child out in the yard sees a dog. Oh, it's a nice looking dog or cat or whatever. A snake, whatever. The child have no idea because it's a child. A toddler perhaps, or whatever you might be thinking of. It's a child. Doesn't have any idea of danger. So the child runs up and smacks the dog and plays the dog. Like a doggy. And the dog gets mad and bites the child. Oh my God, what does the child do? Nothing. She's been a child. He's been a child. That's what kids do. That's what children do. But you mature, you go out in the street, you see a dog out there. Dog looking vicious. Be like, okay, no, this is I don't know who dog it is. So you're gonna go cautiously. You're gonna approach the dog. If you want to approach a dog, you have to approach a dog with caution. You see it on TV. People who go to redeem stray dogs and stuff. They don't just walk up to the dog and hug them. No, they approach the dog cautiously. They talk to the dog. They talk nicely. They use soft words. They speak nicely. They have little food in their hand and they make little lines with the food. They are gentle. They're nice. They're kind. The dog himself don't just run up to them. The dog be hiding, ducking, trying to. It's like, what are you trying to? Who you come to? Oh, you better don't come close to me because I'll bite you. Both parties, very cautious. That's what. Be perfect. If you're an adult, that's how you live life. You don't talk to your boss any old how. We covered that. We talk about that. No, that's your boss. Are you nuts? Remember, that's your boss. You don't go cussing your boss, talking about why you this and that. I'm 2 minutes late. You making a big deal. What's the big deal? No. That's your boss. Have some respect. Understand. Maturity in your mind says, okay, that's my boss. I'm late. It's 2 minutes, so listen, that's not the point. You're late. The police pull you over. Who knows why? Not because you're black. They pull you over. You don't know why. Why you mad? You cussing the police, and why you pull me over? You pull me over because I'm black. You pull me over because I'm driving. Even though that could be the case. But in your maturity, that's not your demeanor. That's not the route you take. No. You know you didn't do anything wrong. You ain't do nothing wrong. You cool. You speak like an adult, not like a ignoramus. That's what old folks would say. See, you worried about the police have an ought against colored people or whatever. You started to make excuses to act a certain way. Or maybe perhaps you have stuff in your car that you know the police is going to chastise you for or lock you up for. If you ain't doing nothing wrong, then okay, chill out. Oh, hey, officer, how you doing? Can I see your license? Oh, sure, no problem. But you mind when you pull me over? I wasn't speeding. I'm pretty sure I was doing 35. Speed limit is 40. Here's my license, but you mind? I don't understand. I work with police officers. I work with them. I'm not saying all police officers are good, but I'm not saying all are bad. I'm not saying because somebody pull you over, they have evil intent. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking to you about your reaction, about your interaction, about your perception, about my own perception. What is going through my mind if I get pulled over? If my boss chastise me for being 2 minutes late. Yeah, I used to have this conversation with my son all the time. If I tell him, hey Josh, there's a school night, I don't want to watch TV beyond a certain time. Beyond a certain time, he's still watching TV. I'm like, yo, Dad, I just want you to finish watching your show. That's not the point. Beyond a certain time, then when that time is, take the TV off. Or come and say, hey Dad, I'm looking at this program. Don't come like at the time. Come before. Dad, I'm looking at this program. My time is 10 o'clock. The program is like really good. Can I stay can I watch it till it ends? And he's done that before, and I say, okay. I'm not a criminal. I'm not, you know what I'm saying? It's the same thing with God. We talk to Him. We pray. We ask Him. We talk to Him. We don't just do what we want to do and then say, well, God, you ought to take that, yes? No. Mm-mm. That's the curse of the law, disobedience. And that's what Yeshua redeemed us from. He showed us the way. That's redeeming. Is I'm taking you from seeing it that way. I'm bringing you over. I'm going to show you my way. Okay? And once you see my way, then that's the way to go. You take that route. You don't go back doing your own thing. No, I thought I showed you. I pulled you from that, took you out of darkness. I brought you into the light. You just see the light and then go back into the darkness. Come on, let's go Deuteronomy 28. We're talking about the curse of the law. Deuteronomy 28 verse 1 says, it shall happen if you shall listen diligently to Jehovah, your Elohim's voice, to observe to do all His commandments, which I command you today, that Jehovah, your Elohim, will set you high above all nations on the earth. If you obey, if you disobey, you expect him to set you high up? Do you really expect him to set you high up above all nations of the earth if you disobey his instructions? Really? It does not work like that. Verse 2, all these blessings will come upon you and overtake you if you listen to his voice. But the blessings only come if you listen. The blessings only come if you are obedient. And you could go on and read all the way down. Verse 13, Jehovah will make you the head and not the tail. You will be above only and will not be beneath. You will, if you listen, if you listen and do, if you hear and do. If you listen to the commandments, read in verse 13. After you make your head, you make it the head and not the tail, above only and not beneath. If you listen to the commandments of Jehovah your Elohim, which I command you today to observe and to do. Remember I said to you before. And shall not turn away from any of the words which I command you today. Don't turn away. Turn toward, run toward. Run to me. Yeshua said, come unto me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Who is me? Who is he saying? Come to him? No, not come to me, the man. Come to me, the word. Come to me, the voice of God. Come to me, the statutes of... If you come to me, I will give you rest. Don't you feel good when you're driving down the road doing the speed limit and you hear the police car coming, and then somebody who passed you 5 minutes ago speeding, the police pull them over. You're not feeling good for them. I'm saying, oh, it's a good thing that wasn't me, because I was doing the speed limit. You even feel good if it's you and you not doing the speed limit, when the police pull somebody else over. Grace is in the hands of the keepers of the law. The people who uphold it, the police, the judge, the magistrate, the king, the president, the prime, the Congress. Those are people who have grace. Those are the people who has grace. Those are the people who, if you break the law, could say, police could say, you know what? I'll give you a warning. I'll let you off with a warning. We talked about that last week. I don't want to go back there again, because we talked about it already. If you didn't hear it, I remind you, go back into the last recording. I think it's called The Two Shall Become One. That's the teaching. The two shall become one. The law and the spirit. Obedience, right? Doing must be, and listening must become one. I listen, I do. I listen, I do. I hear, not I listen, I hear and I do. I hear and I do. That must become one. The two must become one. Paul said, where sin abounds, grace does much more abound. What does that mean? That the more you sin is the more you get grace? No, that's not what that means. The more you sin is the more punishment you will get. Where sin abounds, grace does much more abounds. Grace looks for he who is willing to turn away from sin. Well, if if you're in the thick of it, if you're in the thick of sin, then grace is watching you more than anybody else because you need it more than anybody else. That's what that means. Because you so far gone. What did Yeshua say in Revelation, the book of Revelation? I prefer you are hot or cold, right? Hot as in, fire, on fire for Jehovah. You following the rules. You setting aside, but you don't care about none of that stuff. You following, or you cold. Well, you just straight up wicked. Because in any of those two instances, I could be there with you. You could be as cold as dog nose, as wicked as can be. Grace is still watching over you, just waiting for you. You gotta turn. The moment you just cry out. We read the story all through the Old Testament. The children of Israel, every time they misbehave, God send them in captivity. In captivity, as soon as they cry out, God send them a deliverer. You see it repeated over and over and over again. Trying to remember where I was. Oh, verse 13. Deuteronomy 28 and 13. He will make you the head and not the tail. You will be above only and not be beneath. If you listen, people, if you do, hear and do, that's what listening entails. Hearing and doing. Which I command you today to observe and to do. You shall not turn away from any words which I command you. Don't turn away. Turning away is turning disobedience. That's the curse. Okay, verse 15. But if it shall come to pass, if you will not listen to Jehovah your Elohim's voice, if you will not listen to his voice, to observe, to do all his commandments and statutes which I command you today, that all these, if you don't listen, if you are disobedient, here comes the curse. That's the curse of the law. The law itself isn't cursed. As a matter of fact, Abraham talks about Paul talks about the righteousness of the law. If you don't listen, if you don't obey, if you don't do, all these curses, and they go on and on and on. And if you read them, I'm sure people look at your own situation and be like, oh boy, oh boy. I've read them. Verse 41, you will father sons and daughters, and they will not be yours, for they will go into captivity. What does he mean? Another country can come and take them? But no, not necessarily. That could be. But that's not what he's saying. Another will come and take them to captivity. They will go into captivity. Drugs. Okay? Addicted to drugs. They fall away into some dark lifestyle. They're not right in their mind. They're not, right in their mind. They have issues, emotional problems. All you could just think about it. Sickness and disease. Just think about it. Just think about it. You wonder where all this sickness and disease coming from. Just think about it for a minute. Could it be? Maybe, perhaps. That's the curse of the law. And that's all we have done so far. It's almost an hour and a half. I want to end here because I want to leave the next part of that verse in Galatians. Go back to that verse in Galatians. Galatians 3. Thus he redeemed us from these curses. Because he says to us, listen, I come to you and I'm going to be perfectly obedient. And I want you to follow my charge. I want you to follow my lane. I want you to follow my disposition, my perception, my understanding, my ways. He says, if my word is in you and you are in my word, you can ask for whatever you want. So how do you expect to be blessed when you yourself are disobedient? When you yourself believe that the Torah, that his instructions are null and void. They've been wiped away. They've been discarded. You don't have to do the Sabbath. You could pick your own day. All of that stuff. You believe all that stuff. And you still want blessings? He didn't. He observed the Sabbath. He did it. He said, I didn't come to destroy anything. I came to perform. I came to perform. I didn't come to destroy. Why you believe he's erased? Why you believe it's erased? Because you were taught that. You were told that. By who? I don't know. It's a good opportunity, a good segue. Deuteronomy 13. Let's go there quick. Who told you? Who bewitched you? As Paul summed up in the very first verse of that chapter of Galatians. Who bewitched you, Galatians? Deuteronomy chapter 13. If a prophet or a dreamer of dreams arises among you and gives you a sign or a wonder, and the sign or the wonder comes to pass, of which he spoke to you, saying, let's go after other gods, which you have not known, let's serve them. You shall not listen to the words of that prophet or the dreamer of dreams, for Jehovah, your Elohim, is testing you to know whether you want to uphold his laws or whether you just want to go after what somebody else say, because they make it sound so nice. We don't have to do that law because Yeshua died and he nailed the law to the cross and all them stories. He nailed your disobedience to the cross. That's what he nailed. He nailed all the works of your disobedience. This man is perfectly obedient, but yet still he was killed. And if you read Deuteronomy 13, you will see there are people out there who will turn you away from the one true and living God. Not necessarily because they want to, because they don't know better. Because they were taught, and they're teaching you what they were taught. But if you read it, you realize, I don't have to, you know what? I don't have to listen to them. And even if I listen to them, I don't have to be afraid of them. No prophet going, well, if you disobey, God is going to bring his wrath because I'm a prophet. Okay. Yeah, right. I'm lining up my obedience with Jehovah Elohim. And I would say to you, I pray that you do the same. Deuteronomy 13, read it. Let's go back to Galatians, because I want to end there And I want to go back there next time we come again. Galatians 3 and 13. So we talk about the redemption from the curse of the law, but now we're going into something different. He said, Galatians 3 and 13 says, having become a curse for us. He was cursed for us. Because it is written, cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree. Next time we come back, we're going to start right there. How did he become? He was perfectly obedient. If he was perfectly obedient, that would make him perfectly righteous. Grace is supposed to come to him and say, man, I've been watching you. You would poof a long. There's a little Jamaican song in my brain just popped up there. He was perfectly obedient. How could somebody who was perfectly obedient become cursed? We're going to talk about that next time. As we close, we're going to go into Numbers 6 and 22, as we always try to do. Except that one time that the video just cut off on me for whatever the reason, I don't know. So, Numbers 6 and 22 says these words. Here, let me just parenthetically say this. I love that word, right? That's my buddy John Walker. That's his word, parenthetically. he uses it too. Aaron is a high priest. Aaron and his sons. That's the lineage of the high priest. Okay? And so God is talking to Moses and saying to Moses, I want the high priest to begin to put my name. When he's addressing the people, when he's speaking to them, I want him to put my name on them. This is Jehovah. I want him to put my name on them. Okay? And so, what's his name? He's not going to be looking at the people for Adonai, or God, or Elohim, or Lord. So, he has a name. Right? And if you study this, the name with Nehemiah and so forth, at least that's what I did. I'll just tell you what I did. That's what I did. Nehemiah and Gordon, Keith Johnson, and other people. I look at the Strongs. Look at this. If I look at the Strongs here and the Browns Driver Briggs concordance, it's Jehovah. That's what they say. Some versions of the Strong say Jehovah with a J. But remember, just throw this in there. J is a new letter. The J is like 800, 900 years old. Right? So this is before the days of J. So if you think about that, if Strongs and Browns Driver, Briggs, and Nehemiah and all I'm saying, there are people who say other things. Okay? You say what you want. I'm not focusing on that. I'm focusing on how I see it and what I see. He's trying to put his name. He's looking for his name so he could bless the people. And so he tells Moses, this is what I want you to tell them. And this is what I want them to do. And when they do this, when I look, I'm going to. So he says, in closing, Numbers 6:22. And Jehovah spoke to Moses, saying, speak to Aaron and to his sons, saying, this is how you shall bless the children of Israel. You shall tell them, Jehovah bless you and keep you. Jehovah make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Jehovah lift up his countenance towards you and give you peace. So they shall put my name on the children of Israel, and I will bless them. Until we meet again, Bonne nuit, Shavua Tov, Shalom, goodbye, buenas noches, buenos días, buenas tardes, adios, peace.